All right. Well, hello and good morning, and welcome to the Drastic Summit 2020 and to today's panel. My name is Taylor Precourt. I am the CEO and founder of She Advisors. We are a concierge consulting firm that works with some of the most innovative companies in the construction space, as well as huge advocates for female leadership across all verticals, which is honestly why I am so honored to be here today and to be discussing such an important topic with this incredible panel all around diversity and inclusion. Today's conversation is sure to be energetic and insightful. But if you don't mind, we are going to start off first by going roundtable and giving a quick, brief introduction about the panelists. And if you guys don't mind, we're going to go one by one really quickly to give you guys a second to give us your background and how you truly find yourself to be a part of the conversation of diversity and inclusion. Curious on your initiatives, or did it find you? Starting with Arlene. She is the director of Colliers Project Leaders.
Hi. So just by way of background, I've been in the construction industry for almost 28 years. I started out practicing architecture and moved into project management, where I oversee our private sector business in corporate office, retail, and hospitality. And with regards to my role in diversity and inclusion, I am on Collier's North American executive leadership team for diversity and inclusion, as well as on the Toronto Crew Committee for Diversity and Inclusion as well. So
fantastic. Well, welcome. We're excited to dive into the conversation. And I did read over your bio and I thought, man, Arlene is one impressive lady. So I can't wait to learn more about what you have going on over at Colliers. Erin, good morning. She is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Manager at Allegion.
Hey everyone, really excited to be part of this panel. Like Taylor just said, I am a customer experience and marketing strategy manager for Allegion. Allegion is a global provider of security solutions and architectural hardware. I've been with the company and in the security industry for about 4.5 years. It's all I've ever known once I graduated university. And through a variety of different roles, I've really found that I'm a people-obsessed person, which has kind of been my avenue into working with diversity and inclusion. Back in 2018, I got really involved with the security industry as a whole, earned a place on SIA, which is the Security Industry Association's Young Professionals Group, which is the RISE committee. And I was just named to the board of directors for the Foundation for Advancing Talent in the Security Industry. And diversity and inclusion are two of the most important kind of initiatives for both of those groups that I belong in, and have just kind of become a passion project for me.
Yes. Looking forward to hearing more from you as well. Ezra, hello, sales and operations for Join, also an interdisciplinary artist, musician.
Yeah, that's me, yeah. I come from the world of construction. I studied construction management in school and went directly into the world of construction management and spent 5 years, working in the field and managing projects, and also spent some time doing pre-construction work. And now I'm working with Join. We provide a pre-construction collaboration and management software. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about your interdisciplinary artistry too. So give us a piece of that.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a musician. I'm an artist in general. So I just use music as like a medium. I also paint. I do photography work as well. And I've used all of these different things at Join as well. So
so it sounds like you're enjoying your career, right? If it's tapping into the artistry. Fantastic. Yeah. And last but not least, we have Matt. Good morning.
Hi, yeah. So I'm Matt Willis. I started in the construction industry. It's a little over 20 years ago at this point, and I started out in the field as a project engineer and got pretty quickly into the technology side of construction, and have been in a few different roles. But one thing I've noticed throughout is that we have had every team I've been on, every company I've been with, it's been largely populated by males and often white males. And to me, it's like a really important aspect of the business to be able to really diversify the people we work with, to get the richness of character and frankly better and more profitable decisions that are made when you have more diversity in the room. So as I move next week into a new leadership role with a new company, this is one of the areas that's super important to me as I start building out a team.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that we can dive right into one of my first questions that I just really am excited to hear from each of you on, and that is, what is diversity? What does it mean to you? What does it look like to you? Matt, since you were the last to speak, we'll start with you.
Sure, I'll go with that. I really put it in terms of making sure the workforce looks like the world around us, and also making sure we have different perspectives in the room when we're making decisions. That probably gets a little bit into inclusion, so I probably hit both of them there, but that's really what it means to me.
Arlene, for your organization, what does diversity look like? I know that you're spearheading a lot of those initiatives as well.
Yeah, I think one of my colleagues put it best the other day as diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is actually being asked to dance.
Yes.
And I think that's really important because for a long time, diversity was the only focus, and it was really just about the numbers. Yeah. But there was no inclusion, and inclusion is creating fairness so that all people are treated equally, regardless of their background. And yeah, I think it's understanding everyone's contribution as being valuable.
Love this. Erin or Ezra, did you want to add to that particular question on diversity?
Yeah, I love the analogy that Arlene used about the dance and then being asked to dance actually at the party. But I almost think that inclusion is a step further than that. It's getting to choose the song, or not having someone else kind of put that permission on you. And I think diversity really starts with inclusion. When you extend your hand and bring someone in, then you're automatically increasing the diversity of the group that you're with. And I think in a work environment or a personal environment, an inclusive space is somewhere that is collaborative and supportive and respectful and values all of the characteristics that make people individuals, respects them, and empowers them to use those characteristics to bring out their most authentic selves.
I couldn't agree more. And to kind of reiterate what Arlene just said, because it is so powerful, we're saying that diversity is being asked to the party, but inclusion is truly being asked to dance. And Erin's going a step beyond and saying it's actually being able to pick the song, right? Or to make the moves. And I do absolutely love that in relation to this topic, because to get to a point where diversity dictates inclusion, you have to create that inclusion environment first, right? So what are you guys doing in your organizations to create that inclusion?
I'm just going to quickly put my 2 cents on inclusion as well. I actually am not a very big fan of that word because I feel like it can be a little othering. I know it's a really well-intentioned idea. The idea of inclusion is a very beautiful idea, but it causes me to think of the question of who's including who. And then when you start having that conversation, it kind of reopens a question of, this is a certain type of people, this is a certain type of people. And if it depends on what the motivation is, right? I've heard of different speakers speak about the idea of intersectionality because it creates an openness, a space for people to be more than just one type of person. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist, so I'm not just a musician, I'm also a painter. I'm also Black. I'm also African. There's just so many different layers to who we are as people. And I think when we allow people to be fully themselves, we are allowing for a space for actual inclusion to happen. And I see that with coming through intersectionality. And there's a bunch of authors who've done, different talks and books about this subject. I know Kimberly Crenshaw is one of the people who's coined the term intersectionality.
Yes.
And so at Join, to answer your second question, at Join,
Please.
We do a lot. We have a lot of these conversations. We create a space for people to feel safe and comfortable to ask questions and talk about these things. We're a very small company, so we're lucky in the fact that out of the 15 of us, 2 of us are Black, and then almost half of us are women identifying. And we also have people who are queer, gender nonconforming in our space as well. So we have a very open platform or space, which is totally different from my background previously in the construction world. And I think it's been super beneficial for all of us. We're all very new to the space. As a startup, we're still figuring out how to best serve our industry. But yeah, the biggest thing that I think we're taking away from this is finding a way to continue these conversations, allow people to talk, and allow people to listen.
Yes. Yes. So just to kind of summarize and fully understand this concept around intersectionality, you are viewing inclusion as like more of a hierarchy. Somebody has to say you're included first. Whereas intersectionality is saying that this is what I bring, this is what you bring, and let's come together. So it offers more of like an organic approach to inclusion.
Right. So it's not siloing a Black person
dictating
to
approach,
being the
right.
Black person. Like, you are Black, but you are also a million other things.
Right.
And so you don't have to just speak into the idea of having a Black experience. You now have the ability to speak into, you know, if you're a person who loves to scrapbook and you're also Black, you can now speak into scrapbooking. You know, you have the platform to be more than just one element. And I think that allows people to grow in empathy for each other and allows people to see that they not only have differences, but they also have similarities on all these different layers.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important when people say diversity and inclusion, it's not to the exclusion of anyone. So I think that's really important. That's something that we're learning, especially as we all are working in a very male-dominated industry. It's really important to know that regardless of how you identify, so it's not to the exclusion of white men, for example, to feel outside of being the diversity inclusion. They are, in fact, key players in first being acknowledged, being heard, being recognized, being educated, and being champions and allies in this. So I just wanted to add that into Ezra's comments there.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm curious, you know, what are you guys doing within your organization? I think traditionally we think of this top-down approach, right? How do you get something to have this high adoption, right? So let's say in the case of a new type of software, right? Typically it's coming from the top through the organization. They adopt a chat tool first, and then, you know, the individual contributors throughout the organization, it kind of threads through. Curious to see what's the approach on the diversity and inclusion. Are you guys seeing a similar approach where it's really top-down?
Well, for Colliers, we're a global company. So first I would say it can't go in any one direction. It can't be the little guy at the bottom, and it can't be coming down from the top. It's a holistic, multifaceted, we have multiple players that we're focusing on. So first of all, it needs to, from the top perspective, it needs to be championed by leadership. It needs to be a priority, and they have to put their money behind it and make it an initiative within the business so that it doesn't just become one person making it a whatever they are thing. It's a human thing, it's a people thing, it's a right business decision thing. So I think it's multifaceted. You know, at Colliers, we're looking at first, being able to truly continually improve. So we're asking our people to help by doing things like self-identifying voluntarily, so that we can benchmark ourselves and set real targets, not something that's pie in the sky, not something that we're just throwing out a number, but we want to be really diligent in following up and continuously improving and assessing that. but we're also doing things like establishing the frameworks and launching ERGs for everything from, veterans to women, BIPOC, LGBTQ. So we're looking at increasing client and community connectivity, also internal connectivity, and engaging our people in ongoing learning and unlearning and training. We're talking thousands of people here. And so, yeah, there is no one approach, and it's baby steps.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get it right every single time.
Sure.
But I think you need to take some form of action and move forward. But I think clearly it needs to come, you need the strength and the allyship and championship of leadership to help drive that change forward.
Yes, the permit what you promote type of framework. I love that. So it's really this holistic approach. It is absolutely a collective. And, Erin, I'm curious to hear from you on your thoughts on what are the impediments we have and the barriers we have today within our field that are really limiting our ability to recognize the broad range of diversity that, exists and how we actually do pave that path forward.
Sure. So first, I just want to say I love that Ezra brought up intersectionality. I think for anyone who's feeling daunting about learning about these topics, intersectionality is a great exercise, like what Ezra said about empathy, because it takes how we self-identify, and through those constructs are how we experience the impact of anything we experience. And I think that really helps people connect to each other and breaks down kind of the complexities of this issue on a more humanistic level. And so if you're feeling daunting, I highly suggest kind of doing an intersectionality exercise where you kind of look at all of the characteristics that impact the way that you experience the world. But as far as impediments to kind of recognizing diversity, or, are we on the right path? From my perspective, I joined the security industry 4 years ago, fresh out of university, kind of with bright eyes at what it would be. I think that it is a very historically white male dominated industry. And I think that we are still seeing some permeated effects of that. And I don't think that that's going to change instantly. I think these are generational changes that happen. But I will say it has been both a blessing to be a younger white female in the industry, because I am not an identity that is, I would say, super common within the industry. But I will say it's also put me in a position where people have said things and I've instantly felt out of place. And I can only imagine that my identity is one that has to manage through that significantly less than some other identities might have to. So I acknowledge my privilege there, but I will say that we've gotten better over the last 4.5 years. I see really incredible initiatives like mentorship programs that are really focused on a more diverse kind of candidate pool for both mentors and mentees. But then things like, partnering with the right schools to recruit people into the industry. Do we have relationships with HBCUs in the United States? Do we have relationships with vocational schools? Are we looking at where our workers are entering our workforce, and can we upskill them based on the experience that they've had doing their roles? And I think there's a lot of opportunities specifically in upskilling, where we're bringing, I know at Allegiant specifically, we have people come into our customer service roles, which is across the board, there's fewer barriers to entry in a role like that. You learn as you go, you're dealing with customer concerns, you're dealing with issues in the field, installation problems, and you're learning our products and solutions really well. Allegiant uses our customer service pool to find candidates that could be really great for spec writing, and then train them because they've gained such incredible knowledge of our products that they wouldn't have gotten had they not been in that position. And so when we look at opportunities for kind of tearing down those barriers and continuing on in the right direction, I don't think we have to look far. I just think we have to get a little more creative.
I love that. And I do think that creativity is definitely going to, have a play here and a say here. we've talked a lot about, it's at least forward, and that's something I like personally live. I'm like, forward's forward, right? I mean, you kind of fail forward, learn as you go, at least take those lessons and iterate on them, make change and make moves. Matt, you mentioned that you're making a career move coming up, and you talked about diversity being one of those things that you wanted to address, in your initial, stint in this position. Can you give us some insight as to what you're, looking at doing? And then I'd like to circle back around with everyone to talk about some tools within your organizations, because Aaron, I also want to know a little bit more about this surveying. And Arlene, you guys talked about surveying. So I'm curious to kind of bounce around to that. So we'll start with Matt, but then we'll come back to you two.
You bet. So starting Monday, I'll be forming an industry strategy team with one of the bigger software players in the AEC space. So stay tuned on that. But part of what I have to do is literally build out a team. I'm the first person on the team. So I think it's just a fantastic opportunity to look at the top of the funnel, and as I'm starting to recruit, to make sure I'm very intentional about, getting a pool of candidates in that can be, winnowed down in those positions to make sure that we're getting those opportunities. But I really liked something that Aaron was talking about in terms of upskilling. One of the things I've been doing over the last couple of months is working as an advisor to a company called Formworks, which is, if you want to maybe think about it this way, looking to be the LinkedIn for craft workers. In other words, helping them manage their careers and helping them really get matched up with other workers as a technology platform. And one of the things I've been doing is engaging with the construction education foundations in the various states and with the trade schools and technical schools. And one of the opportunities I do see is to take that relatively diverse, let's call it, craft workforce that we're developing. It's not gender diverse yet, but there's an opportunity there, and look at ways to specifically train people to be foremen, to be superintendents, to really move their way up in the ranks, because starting as a craft worker, construction is a career that can turn into a very, not only physically but financially rewarding career for folks. But we have to be intentional about making sure that we're focusing on that upskilling. So Aaron, thanks for bringing that into the conversation.
I too really appreciated the conversation around upskilling. And Arlene and Aaron, you guys mentioned about the surveying. So, essentially you're asking for your entire pool of, employees and probably contracted workers to get vulnerable and to self-identify so that you guys can, best serve them. Curious to know, how are you going about doing that? What's your response rate on pieces like that? Because not to bounce around too much, but I know, Ezra, you mentioned you work for a smaller company, which we all know, if you only have 2 people in the room, it's pretty easy to figure out where to have lunch. If you ask 15, all right, it's getting harder. If you ask thousands, now we're, potentially in trouble. So please, Arlene, share with us.
So we're using an internal technology platform that is a tool that everyone uses to utilize and access information, and to keep track of their own personal company information. And what we're doing is going a step further because it's voluntary. And I think I want to just step back and say it's hard to and what capture more information. We want to be able to understand people's opportunities to move up, whether they're lateral moves or vertical moves, promotional, but also at all levels of the company. So at the executive levels, at the management levels, and at the working levels. And so we have everything from administrative staff all the way up to our C-suite. And in order to make marked changes, we want to, it's a hard thing to hold a mirror to yourself and look at all of your flaws. But we need to do that in order that we can set truly measurable targets that we can check against. And so Yeah, we're right in the middle of running it right now. Again, for this year, we typically get a 65% response rate, but it depends on the questions.
Sure.
And one thing that I want to say is part of the biggest challenge in doing this is communication, because people have to feel safe. They have to feel that their information is confidential, that it's not going to be used to their detriment. There needs to be a level of trust. And so the cadence of the communication, and explain to people what you're doing with the information and what the purpose is, and that it's not being shared even with the other HR groups. Like, that's really important in order for us to do this. But coming from an industry that is, if a male dominated industry is that where there's less than 25% participation by females, we're in it. And it helps inform us about the decisions that we're going to make, whether we're recruiting at the executive level or whether we are participating within a community or recruiting in new universities, colleges, with trades and education. So the surveying the information really helps us inform the decisions that we're making.
Yeah, and keeping that open communication. I love that. Really giving them the why are we asking these questions, why it's important, sharing in the vision, sharing in, what you guys are looking for the future, to essentially look like, I could imagine would be extremely helpful in terms of the turnout of, engagement. Erin, going to kind of pass by the question that Arlene has so diligently answered and kind of hit you with something that I saw when I was doing some research on this panel. And that is the World Economic Forum study found that women work 10% harder than men in today's office space. This speaks volumes, obviously, about the value of having women in the industry. Though women have had some big inroads in construction offices, with almost 76% of female construction professionals alone working in the office side. There's still a lot of ground to be gained on the field side. I'm curious to see, how are you guys filling that gap?
Yeah, so for Legion, it would be a little bit different. Our sales force is out in the field actively working with construction, but we're not necessarily part of the construction process. So I can answer it kind of from my perspective based on what I know from our business. But our sales force is huge, especially in the United States, and Canada has a fairly large one as well. And I'd say it's my perception is that it's still pretty male dominated, but I will say that we have a lot of female leaders within the sales organization that have really started taking this on as their project that they want to champion. And we have a lot of different leadership programs that feed into different departments of our business, whether it's, credit or logistics, supply chain, sales. And part of that process is pairing with mentors. And I really think that mentorship program helps especially young women who are entering the industry see themselves growing their career in the industry. I know that was really important to me when I was really starting out and building my career. And as I've kind of gone through this early career trajectory, is finding people that I can identify with who have made those inroads for themselves, who have been those trailblazers, who have, fought the good fight and elevated themselves to a position where they have more responsibilities and more power and more influence. But what I find is the most important for any person that's putting themselves in an elevated position or is, blazing a trail towards something that hasn't been accomplished widely yet, is we really need people to extend the hand behind us and help kind of bring people with us. And when we elevate ourselves, we've got to make sure someone can come up that step behind us. And I think that is something that I found really valuable in the industry. And I would assume that it's the same within the construction world. I think that women are really amazing, and they really can champion everything for each other. But it takes a special kind of passionate, charismatic leader to really put themselves in an elevated position and then use that position to influence the change behind them. And so I've seen it on Allegion's side. I think our sales force is moving in the right direction. I know we have a lot of younger females that are entering the sales force and being out in the field. And then we have a lot of females who are in other positions in other departments. And we've got a couple on the executive leadership team as well. But I think that's the biggest barrier to entry is you want to find someone who you can identify with, who is going to help empower you, and then who is going to help you find your stepping so that you can kind of elevate yourself as well.
Sure.
I'd just like to weigh in here because this is like one of the things that is really critical if we want to make a change in real estate and construction. Because like in Canada, 73% of our people work offsite, women work offsite, and only 27% work onsite. So what that means for us is that for every 4 women, for every 100 men on a construction site, there's about 4 women. And it's almost structural in how difficult it is for women to break those barriers. Because if you think about it, I have young project managers, a majority, 50% of my team are women, who have to decide where they're going to go to the bathroom in the morning before they go to a construction site, because there isn't an accommodation. And so the question is really about accommodation. Like, how many places can you go you know, not just to the bathroom, but to find your equipment. Like, what are they purchasing? They're purchasing even for the sites. It's construction hats and harnesses, and it's not generally acceptable, and the industry hasn't shifted to accommodate both. And the trades is a great career, and it hasn't been encouraged the way that it should be. We are losing craftsmen, and to Matt's point, I mean, it sounds incredible that there's a network. It's really hard to find somebody that has a specialty in glass. It's really hard to find young people that think that trades are something that's profound. But I mean, I joke about this with people, but our elevator guys make great money. Electricians make great money. They have great careers. They run great businesses. And so it shouldn't be underestimated the value of trades and what young men and women of diverse backgrounds can do. And so, again, it's about communication and education and letting people know that this is available, and it needs to be promoted more by all parties, both, the suits that are behind the desks, but also in the schools and the, K through 12. That the trades are, it's a wonderful craft, and it's wonderful careers with great earning potential.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't love what you said anymore. I think everybody's face on the panel was like, yes, Arlene, more of everything that you said. I think of the way that we have iterated from a tech perspective, even in construction, we're getting there, but on the accommodation side, and I say getting there in terms of we're becoming more organized, technology in essence is sexy. So now being able to say, well, you can actually work in construction and technology is something, 10, 20 years ago was like, that was not a thing. It was one or the other. The application had not, transitioned to this particular industry yet. But now you look at companies like Construction Robotics, for example, they've built out a robot, a cobot that you can actually pick up, let's say, 75-pound block on the job site, and it's weightless. It's this float device. So now women can enter into masonry. And there's so many other companies that are coming to bring their products to market to really revolutionize and to fill that, because there's already a labor shortage on the trade side, and there's already a significant shortage on the diversity piece.
Right.
Please.
I wanted to quickly pop in on that as well. As someone who kind of started in the construction world, actually being in the field, I felt very ill-equipped on what was going on the job site. And I leveraged technology to my benefit. And I wrote a whole blog on this for Join on our website. But I kind of go through talking about my story about how I believe that technology can potentially be the great equalizer to create more space for diversity.
Mm.
So I started my first job working under somebody whose parents had previously worked in construction. So the person who I was working under had a great wealth of knowledge that came from his experience with his family. And so my family is from Ethiopia, and my dad worked in transportation, and my mom was a nurse. So they have nothing to do with construction. So I got none of that handed down to me. But in that space, I was first introduced to a technology called PlanGrid. It's just an app that allows you to navigate your plans. And in that process, just using that app, I was able to kind of better understand what was actually happening on the site while I was actually trying to manage the people. I'm seeing where things are happening, where things should be going in place. And it really like empowered me to keep going in my career at a time where I felt pretty hopeless, you know?
I love that you mentioned Tracy and Ralph from PlanGrid. So I've been in construction for almost a decade, and I believe the company that I was working representing at the time, we were one of PlanGrid's first customers. And now, like, look how far they have come in their acquisition with Autodesk. But that is a perfect use case, Ezra, as to where technology is, in fact. And I really never saw it from that light, but it is. I was looking at it from an organization of plans, there was this huge problem, but I really never turned my head to think of, you're right, it's really evening out that playing field. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Matt, I believe that you had some additional comments that you wanted to make on that.
Well, it really was connecting a couple of points now, I guess, since we brought technology in, because that's kind of my area as well. First, in terms of the career pathing for craft workers, for example, the Construction Education Foundation of Georgia down here in Atlanta has a K-12 pathways program. They've got something like 170 high schools that there are K-12 systems they're working with to really introduce kids to the opportunities into construction. And they're looking at that as an opportunity to create diversity across gender lines and also racially. But really just to bring a great funnel of people into the industry. I think the challenge is to also help them start to think about this as a career, not a job. Because I think too often on the craft side, and this has been my experience in engaging through this process with Formworks, is that often on the craft side, there's maybe a thought that was just a job, but there's such fantastic career opportunities where people can really bring themselves into that American dream we talk about economically, even through entrepreneurism. Because if you gain those skills as a craft worker, you start to get to know some people that you might form a crew with, and this is how the Turner Construction wasn't, it was just some guy Turner that went and started something, right? So that opportunity exists today for the people who are entering this profession, no matter where they come from.
Yeah, the mindset of like, it could be you, right? We're all told, dream as big as you want. I'm a mother of 4 children. And I know every day I'm like, you could be whatever you want to be, right? And the reality is it's true, but we also, I think as leaders in the industry, we need to make sure that we're creating the opportunity. And I think spreading the word, educating through even marketing, are we marketing this enough as an industry whole? Right? Not just Colliers going on and saying, work for Colliers, it's amazing. But are we coming together as a collective to talk about and to educate, the next generation as to the dream that they could build within the construction sector? I'm curious to know, what are you guys doing right now in terms of sourcing candidates? Like, what are your best means and methods? Are there particular platforms you mentioned, like a LinkedIn for construction? How are you finding the right candidates so that we can ensure that the culture of our companies do speak to the D&I initiatives that we have, in place? Anybody on that one?
Well, I'll jump in. I'm not part of our talent acquisition team, but I know that so we've set requirements and real targets to make sure that everyone knows that we are looking to level the playing field in terms of reviewing the candidates, in terms of where we're looking for candidates. Historically, um, construction and real estate companies have always fished in the same pond. And then diversity and inclusion came back and they still kept fishing in the real pond, in the same pond. And it drives me crazy when people say, well, I just can't find them. And I'm like, you're looking where you've always looked, and that hasn't changed. You need to look someplace else. And so we have outreach programs and working with both colleges, universities, and looking at partnering and working with trades and the unions to understand where their people are coming from, running internships. We have our younger people going out as part of the jobs day or recruiting to go to not only their alma maters, but to stand as role models when they're going to new universities or colleges or trade schools to say, you too can be like this. This is an opportunity. If you studied this plethora of things, you can also become any one of these opportunities. In terms of our executive, in order to change the level, because it can't just be incremental growth, that will take forever. And I don't want this to be generational. I want it to be now. We have to also put in place policies to say that we need to allow the opportunity for equal representation and looking at the organizations. So, for example, in Canada, our CEO has signed the Black North Initiative, which is making quantifiable commitments to reach targets, but it also provides you access to Black professionals, for example. And we're also doing that with other communities in the BIPOC. We work a lot with First Nations and looking to branch out, as well as veterans. And so I think we look at it as multiple pronged. So I think it's around policy, it's around procurement, not just of people, but of what you're spending your money and what's your buying power doing? Like, are your partners required to meet these obligations as well? So you're well-intentioned, you're doing this, but our clients are asking for it, and we're asking for it from people that are providing services to us, as well as employee recruitment. So, policy, procurement, protocols that we're putting in place, and employee recruitment. I think we have to change where we've always been fishing and allow opportunities for minority businesses or veteran-owned businesses or other types of businesses to participate, and change where we've always been recruiting to open it up to different venues.
Yes. So it's kind of get out of your own way, right? Take a new path, see what else is out there, get creative. If I could kind of summarize what we're talking about when it comes to inclusion and what the work setting looks like, because I think a lot of that, goes into play with this particular conversation. It's that, your employees feel well respected. The employee experience creates this sense of belonging, right? So that there is this high trust, high vulnerability. Employees are empowered to contribute to the work processes as your companies are growing, and they have a fair chance in progressing in their careers with this upskilling. So we talked about, some of the tools, means, and methods on the recruitment. We've talked about how do you create a workplace setting that is geared to a successful D&I initiative and environment? But I'm curious, for those that are listening in today, or, even to the recording of this, what are their long-term consequences for ignoring the conversation in our industry?
Before we go into that real quick, I just wanted to do a quick name drop. There's a website called Jopwell, JOPWELL.com, and they keep resumes of folks who are Black, Indigenous, people of color. They have everybody on there that you can pick from, just like reach out to, as an alternative, or someone that you can look out to for trying to find people who are in that realm. We've used them, and we also, being a small company, we've also asked each other, in our networks, who do we know who are people that would meet these criterias, and we bring them to the table and we have these conversations. So when I was actually getting interviewed, I had a very candid conversation with a few of the people at Join who were interviewing me, because coming from the world of construction, I've obviously experienced a lot of racism, unfortunately. And so in our conversation, I said, hey, I come from this space, I've experienced this, and our clients are going to be these same people. I just want to make sure that I feel safe with you guys and that you guys have my back. Would you guys be able to support me if I was in a situation or a conversation where one of our clients said something offensive to me? Just a simple question that I asked them. And everyone's immediate response was, first off, we're really sorry that you had to experience that. We come from a space where all of us are starting to learn. At that time, they were starting to learn and understand what my experience could potentially look like. And so they came from a place that was very welcoming to me, because it showed that they were willing to learn and willing to ask questions. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to really have that conversation. And I'm not requesting that everyone have that conversation, but I think as people who are hiring, when we speak to our potential candidates, I interview a lot of people. I always ask a question around diversity. And it's not to make them uncomfortable, but it's to let them know that we see ourselves as a safe space to have these types of conversations. And we want you, the person who's being interviewed, to also recognize that, we're not ignorant to what's happening. Doesn't mean that we know everything, but we're willing to ask questions and have these conversations. And I think it requires a lot of humility on our front. And I just want to encourage that for people who are hiring.
That's really profound. I'm so glad that you shared that with us, because the reality is not everyone could say, I could have that conversation with upper management. So those leaders that are listening into the conversation, I think that Ezra is a perfect testament to what change looks like. And it looks like that. That's what inclusion is, that your people feel safe enough to say, hey, would I come first or the customer comes first? And I think we know where everyone on this particular conversation stands. So Ezra, applause, because you took the vulnerable step, and it sounds like you were rewarded because you are still with Join. So congratulations, they gave you the right response. Now you're in a happy career, in a happy space. And interestingly enough, we are almost out of time, but one of the questions that I was going to end the conversation with was a shared pool of resources. If there are certain names, if I'm new at this as a leader, or even as an individual contributor, we do have a lot of leaders on the line, but maybe, I'm in more of an administrative role. How can I educate myself? What are resources available to me?
I don't mind starting. One of the things I've been trying to do this year is really, I'm a white male, right? I have a certain experience of the world that is just, I'm from a small town in Central Texas, right? So that tells you, kind of where I'm from. And I've been doing a lot of reading because I think it takes, I don't understand the experience the way other people have experienced the world. So be it Austin Channing Brown, Tanisha Coates, I've just been trying to do a lot of reading to understand the experience that others have had that I haven't had the opportunity to have firsthand. And I think it's one of the things that's important for people to do is just try to gain whatever experience you can through books and other means.
Yeah, are there particular websites that you guys are going to or associations we should be joining?
Yeah, so we use Catalyst is a really great organization. They I just received a business leader award from them this year, which was incredible. And thank you. And they provide a plethora of information, everything from research data to on how to on 6-part step on how to build an ERG for your organization, and the tools that they provide. So you can just simply use the website, or you can utilize them as an actual resource. But we also are working with a lot of real estate organizations. So ULI, RealPAC, Crew just did an amazing benchmarking study. I think it's groundbreaking because it's for the real estate and construction industry on women and around pay equity. And so that's crew.org. That's amazing information and data, because we're in business and everything is a business case, and it provides you the collateral data. But so ULI, RealPAC, Crew are some of the other organizations, SIOR, that are partnering together to help change policy and help change government and help change the industry from the old status quo to something new. And there's a coalition that's coming together. So they're sharing information and data, and whoever has the strongest strength are allowing the other one. And CoreNet is another one that's also got some great D&I programs and toolkits that people can utilize.
Fantastic. Aaron, Matt, Ezra, anything else that you really want our audience to take away from today's conversation?
Yes, I would say, please Google Angela Davis. Her teachings have been available to us since the 1970s, probably 60s actually. And she's still doing lectures. She's still doing a bunch of really cool stuff, a lot of abolitionist work. I highly suggest you just look her up. She also has speeches recordings on Spotify. So if you want to listen to like a podcast or listen to music, you can just go on Spotify and you can just type in Angela Davis and listen to a bunch of her talks. I think that's a great place to start, so people can start asking more questions and start growing.
Fantastic.
It is. I think the only couple resources I would add, I think Brene Brown has a podcast called Unlocking Us, and that's been, a lot of the episodes have been really interesting because it really dives into a conversation about empathy and the human experience. But that podcast and Brene Brown in particular has given me some of the language that I can now use to express kind of my understanding of topics like this. So that's a good one. But I know that this one was really impactful when it was shared within a Legion, and it was for all the parents who are part of the organization. But Sesame Street did, I want to say, like a town hall with CNN about racism and diversity. And I think, when I think, like I said, I'm people obsessed. And so the work that we do doesn't stop when we go home, or in this case, when we leave our office and go into the kitchen. And I think people who have the responsibility of raising little ones often feel a tremendous burden of trying to figure out how to teach them about this. And that one was a really, really great resource for parents in particular. And so I thought I'd share that because I know that there's a lot of really powerful moms and dads out there. And that was a really cool one to see.
talk about the human experience, like, right, we should be able to talk about, we also are raising this generation. We're hiring now, but we're raising this one. Let's talk about that. That comes back to the holistic approach. It is a collective. So I'm so glad, Aaron, that you tapped on that. And Matt, any resources that you want to add before we sign off here?
Well, there's certainly some great organizations in construction, such as NAWIC, National Association of Women in Construction. And then within the universities, if you're looking to recruit in NSBE and NSHE chapters, and that's in addition to the HBCUs. So I would just say there's lots of places we can go in terms of finding people, and I tend toward books and podcasts. So I think Angela Davis may be one of my next ones.
Fantastic. So we've done our job because Matt's going to be introduced to Angela Davis.
Exactly.
This is all worth it. You know what I'm going to do from She Advisors perspective is I'm actually going to go back through the recording, gather all of the goodness that we had from today's conversation, and create a one-page download all around how you can, change or, advocate for change within your organization based on all of the leaders that have shared with us today. So that is really going to be my gift to you guys as a thank you to you. Thank you to Drastic Summit and everyone that has listened to today's conversation. We believe it's critical, it's important, which is why we're here talking about it. And if you're uncomfortable, I would have to add this: get comfortable, because this is not going away, right? We're not going to be silenced. Change is necessary. It is now. To Arlene's statement, which actually gives me chills, is yes, it's going to happen generations from now, but it can also be now. So it doesn't have to be for the next generations. We can truly make the change and make the impact now, but it's going to take togetherness. It's going to take people talking about it, having the conversation, not just being a listener, but being a doer. And so that would be my piece on that. Thank you all for the conversation. It was so lovely to meet each of you. And thank you to the Drastic Summit. You guys rock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.